Byways to Blessedness by James Allen, Chapter 4, Burden Dropping. This to me is life, that if life be a burden, I will join to make it but the burden for some. Barley. Have you heard that it was good to gain the day? Also say it is good to fall. Battles lost in the same spirit in which the warm water with man. We here read much about burden bearing, but of the better way of burden dropping, where little is heard. Oh no! And why should you go about with an oppressive weight as your heart? Will your mind relieve yourself of it and move amongst your fellows, heart free and cheerful? No man carries a load upon his back, except to necessarily transfer something from one place to another. He does not sandal his shoulders with a perpetual burden, and then regard himself as a martyr for his pains. And why should you impose on your mind a useless burden, and then add to its weight the misery for self-condolence and self-pity? Why not abandon both your load and your misery, and thus add to the gladness of the world by first making yourself glad? No reason can justify, and no logic support, the ceaseless carrying of a grievous load. As in things material, a load is only undertaken as a necessary means for transference. It is never a source of sorrow. So in things spiritual, a burden should only be taken up as a means towards some good and necessary end, which, when attained, the burden is put aside, and the carrying of such a burden, far from being a source of grief, will be a cause for rejoicing. We see then bodily mortifications which some religious ascetics inflict upon themselves are unnecessary when, and as mental mortifications which so many people inflict upon themselves less unnecessarily when. Where is the burden which should cause unhappiness or sorrow? It does not exist. If a thing is to be done, let it be done joyfully, cheerfully, and not with inward groanings and lamentations. It is the highest wisdom to embrace necessity as a friend and a guide. It is the greatest folly to scowl upon necessity as an enemy, and to wish or try to overcome or avoid her. We meet our own at every turn, and duties only become oppressive loads when refuse, recognize, and embrace them. He who does any necessary thing in niggardly and complaining spirit, hunting the while after unnecessary pleasures, lash himself with the scorpions of misery and disappointment, and imposes upon himself a doubly winged burden of weariness and unrest, on which he insistently groans. Wake thou self to better things. To one the heights uplift thine wings. Take up the psalm of life anew. Sing of the good, sing the true, sing the full victory over wrong. Make thou a richer, sweeter song of thine doubting, cared pain. Wake thou a joyful, glad refrain of thine thorns, a crown wave, thou of rare rejoicing, sing thou now. I will give my cheerful, unselfish, and undivided attention to the doing of all those things which enter into my compact with life. And though I walk under colossal responsibilities, I shall be unconscious of any troublesome weight or worse burden. You see a certain thing, a duty, a companionship, or a social obligation troubles you, is burdensome. You resign yourself to the oppression with the thought, I have entered into this and I will go through with it, but it's a heavy and a grievous work. But is the thing really burdensome? Or it is your selfishness that is oppressing you? I tell you that that very thing which you regard as so imprisoning a rejection is the first gateway to your emancipation. That work which you regard as a perpetual curse contains for you the actual blessedness which you vainly persuade yourself lies in another and an unapproachable direction. All things are mirrors in which you see yourself reflected, and the gloom which you perceive in your work is but the reflection of that mental state which you bring to it. Bring a right and unselfish state of heart to the thing, and lo, it is once transformed and becomes a means of strength and blessedness, reflecting back that which you have brought to it. If you bring a scrolling face to your looking glass, will you complain of the glass that it glores upon you with a deformed visage? Or will you put your face right and so get back from the reflector a more pleasing countenance? If it is right and necessary that a thing should be done, then the doing of it is good. It can only become burdensome in wishing not to do it. The selfish wish makes the thing appear evil. If it is neither right nor necessary that a thing should be done, then the doing of it in order to gain some coveted pleasure is a folly, which can only lead to burdensome ensues. The duty which you shirk is your reproving angel. The pleasure which you race after is your flattering enemy. Foolish man, when will you turn around and be wise? Is the beneficence of the universe, it is everywhere and at all times, urging its creatures to wisdom, and it demands coherence of its atoms. The folly and the selfishness entail suffering ever-increasing degrees of intensity is preservative and good, for agony is the enemy of apathy and the herald of wisdom. What is painful? What is grievous? What is burdensome? Passion is painful, folly is grievous, selfishness is burdensome. It's a dark idolatry itself, which, when our thoughts and actions once are done, demands that a man should weep and bleed and groan. Eliminate passion, folly, and the selfishness from your mind and conduct, and you will eliminate the suffering from your life. Burden dropping consists in abandoning the inward selfishness and putting pure love in its place. Oh, that's good statement. So let's repeat. Burden dropping consists in abandoning the inward selfishness and putting pure love in its place. Go to your task with love in your heart, and you will go to it light-hearted and cheerful. The mind, through ignorance, creates its own burdens and inflicts its own punishments. No one is doomed to carry any load. Sorrow is not arbitrarily imposed. These things are self-made. Reason is the rightful monarch of the mind, and anarchy reigns in his spiritual kingdom when his throne is usurped by passion. When love, pleasure is to the fore, happiness and anguish compose are rare. You're free to choose. Even if you are bound by passion and feel helpless, you are bound yourself and are not helpless. Where you have bound you can unbind. You have come to your present state by degrees, and you can recover yourself by degrees, reinstate reason, and dethrone passion. The time to avoid evil is before pleasure is embraced. But once embraced, its train of consequences should teach you wisdom. The time to decide is before responsibility is adopted. But once adopted, all selfish considerations, whether attendant grumblings, whinings, and complainings, should be religiously excluded from the heart. Responsibility loses their weight when carried lovingly and wisely. What a heavy burden is mine, which is not made heavier and more unendurable by weak thoughts of selfish desires. If your circumstances are trying, it is because you need them and can evolve the strength to meet them. They are trying because there's some weak spot within you, and they will continue to be trying until that the spot is eradicated. Be glad that you have the opportunity of becoming stronger and wiser. No circumstances can be trying to wisdom. Nothing can weary love. Stop brooding over your own trying circumstances and contemplate the lives of some of those about you. Here is a woman with a large family who has to make ends meet on a pound a week. She performs all her domestic duties, down to the washing, finds time to attend on sick neighbors, and manages to keep entirely out of the two common quagmires, debt and despondency. She is cheerful from morning to night, and never complains of her trying circumstances. She is perennially cheerful because she is unselfish. She is happy in the thought that she is a means of happiness to others. Were she to brood upon the holidays, the pretty Bibles, the lazy hours of which she is deprived, of the play she can't see, the music she can't hear, the book she can't read, the party she can't attend, the good she must do, the friendship she is debarred from forming, of the many pleasure which might only be hers if her circumstances were more favorable. If she brought thus, what is a miserable creature she would be? How unbearably laborious her work would become. How very little domestic duty would hang like a millstone about her neck, dragging her down to the degree which, unless she alters her state of mind, she would quickly reach, killed by selfishness. No, but not living in vain desire for self, she is relieved of all burdens, and is happy. Cheerfulness and unselfishness are sworn friends. Love knows no heavy toil. Here is another woman with a private income which is more than sufficient, combined with leisure and luxury, yet because she is called upon to fulfill a portion of her time, pleasure, and money to discharge some obligation which she wishes to be rid of, and which should be to her a work of loving service, or fostering in her heart some ungratified desire, she is perpetually discontented and unhappy, and complains of trying circumstances. Discontent and selfishness are inseparable companions. Self-love knows no joy for labor. Of the two sets of circumstances above depicted, a life is crowded with such contrasted instances. Which are the trying conditions? It is not true and neither of them are trying, that both are blessed and unblessed in accordance with the measure of love or selfishness which is infused into them. It is not the root of the whole matter in the mind of the individual, not in the circumstances. In the circumstance, when the man who has recently taken up the study for some branch of theology, religion, or occultism says, "If I had not burdened myself with the wife, the family, I could have done a great work. And had I known years ago what I know now, I would never have married." That man has not yet found the commonest and the broadest will of wisdom. For there is no greater folly than regret, and that he is incapable of the great work which he is so ambitious to perform. If a man has such deep love for his fellow man, that he is anxious to do a great work for humanity, he will manifest that surpassing love always in the place where he now is. His home will be filled with it, and the beauty and the sweetness of his unselfish love will follow wherever he goes, making happy those about him and transmuting all things into good. The love that goes abroad to air itself and is undiscoverable at home is not love. It is vanity. Have I not seen, oh pitiful sight, the cheerless home and the neglected children of the misguided missionaries and religionists? It is on such a self-delusion and this that self-pity and self-martyrdom ever wait. It is a self-inflicted misery is regarded by its deluded one as a holy, absolute burden which he or she is called upon to bear. Only a great man can do a great work, and will be great wherever he is, and will do his noble work under whatsoever conditions he may find himself when he has unfolded and revealed that work. Thou who art so anxious to work for humanity, to help thine fellow men, begin that work at home. Help thyself, thy neighbor, thy wife, thy child. Do not be deluded until thou doest with utmost selfishness, utmost faithfulness, the nearer and the lesser thou canst not do, the farther and the greater. If a man has lived many years with life in lust and selfish pleasure, it is in the order of things that his accumulated errors should at last weigh heavily upon him, as until they are thus brought home to him, he will not abandon them, will not exert himself to find a better life, but while he regards his self-made, self-imposed burdens as holy crosses imposed upon him by the Supreme, whereas marks of superior virtue as laws which fate, circumstances, or other people have heaped undeservedly and unjustly upon him, he is bound lengthening out his folly, increasing the weight of his burdens, and multiplying his pains and sorrows. Only when such a man wakes up to the truth that his burdens are of his own making, that they are the accumulated effects of his own acts, will he cease from unmanly self-pity and found a better way of burden dropping. Only when he opens his eye to see that his every thought and act is another brick, another stone, built into the temple of the life, will he develop the insight which will enable him to recognize his own unstable handiwork, the unflinching manliness to acknowledge it, and the courage to build more nobly and enduringly. Painful burdens are necessary, but only so long as we lack love and wisdom. The temple of blessedness lies beyond the outer courts of suffering and humiliation, and to reach it, the pilgrim must pass through the outer courts. For the time, he will linger in the outer, but only so long as, through his own imperfect understanding, he mistaken it for the inner. While he pities himself and confounds suffering with holiness, he will remain suffering. But when casting off the last unholy rag of self-pity, he perceives that suffering is a means and not the end. That is, a state of self-originated and self-propagated, then converted and right-minded, he will rapidly pass through the outer courts and reach the inner abode of peace. Suffering does not originate in the perfect, but in the imperfect. It does not mark the complete, but the incomplete. It can, therefore, be transcended. Its self-born cause can be found, investigated, comprehended, and forever removed. It's true, therefore, that we must pass through agony to rest, through loneliness to peace. But let the sufferer not forget that it is a passing through, that the agony is a gateway and not a habitation, that the loneliness is a pathway and not a destination, that a little further on he will come to the painless and blissful repose. Little by little is a burden accumulated. Imperceptibly and by degrees is its weight increased. A thoughtless impulse, a gross self-indulgence, a blind passion yielded to and gratified again and again, an impure thought fostered, a cruel word uttered, a foolish thing done time after time, and at last the gathered weight of many follies becomes oppressive. At first, for the time, the weight is not felt, but is being added to day after day, and the time comes when the accumulated burden is felt in all the galling weight, when the bitter fruits of selfishness are gathered as the heart is troubled with the weariness of life. When this period arrives, let the sufferer look to himself. Let him search for the blessed way of burden dropping, finding which he will find the wisdom to live better, purity to live sweeter, love to live nobler, will find in the reversal of that conduct by which his burdens were accumulated, light-hearted nights, day, cheerful action, and unclouded joy. Come out the world, come above it, up over its crosses and graves. Though the green earth is fair and love it, we must love it as masters and not slaves. Come up where the dust never rises, but only the perfume of flowers, and your life shall be glad with surprises of beautiful hours.